Alright guys, now that we have this HP PC all booted up and ready to go, let's talk about a couple benchmarks real quick. Now as I mentioned, I decided to test this PC using the graphics card and also using the Vega 6 graphics on the 5300G in 3 titles, those being Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Rainbow Six Siege. First up, we're going to dive into some Fortnite in performance mode using the RX 5500 and the 5300G, and we ended up getting an average of about 140 plus FPS. This is a pretty playable experience. You can play 1080p high refresh rate with this budget gaming PC no problem whatsoever. The Ryzen 5300G is not holding back the GPU in this scenario. There are some scenarios where we start to see the 4 cores and 8 threads of the 5300G hold back the system, but we'll talk more about that later. But this GPU and CPU pairing makes a whole lot of sense, and honestly makes a lot more sense than the other pairing we took a look at before with the Ryzen 5 5600G, because with that configuration, the 5600G was, well, a pretty high-end CPU compared to the RX 5500, and the 5500 was a significant bottleneck, so something to keep in mind. But when we switch over to the 5300G with Vega graphics, we do start to see how important that graphics card is. We do get 70 FPS average in performance mode, which is playable, so if you're somebody who wants to pick up one of these 5300Gs when they hit the shelves, which I'm not 100% sure if the Ryzen 3 5300G is also coming to retail shelves, let me know in the comment section down below if you know that. You can actually play Fortnite, which we do expect, but it really does not feel like a major upgrade from the 3200G or 3400G. Yes, it does have faster CPU cores, so in games like Fortnite that are really CPU dependent, you would have a slight increase over something like the 3400G with the lesser IPC, but in any other scenario where you're really stressing the actual graphics, you're going to be limited. Do keep in mind, if you do purchase one of these off the shelf in August, you can put in a motherboard that has overclocking support on the iGPU, which I've seen could get like 10 to 15 more FPS, so if you guys want to see a video about us overclocking the iGPUs to see how much performance we can get, be sure to subscribe and comment down below because we will be doing some custom builds with these things very soon. But in terms of Fortnite, it's playable either way, but you do get much higher frame rates with the dedicated graphics card. Next up in Apex Legends, we start to see a much bigger difference. We ran on medium settings at 1080p, and we ended up getting about 100 plus FPS in the Arenas mode. I'm not really sure if Arenas mode is much more demanding than the main game, but it's much easier for us to benchmark, so we're going to be using Arena modes from here on out. But getting over 100 plus FPS and showing that CPU and GPU usage in the top left corner is very balanced makes a whole lot of sense, as this being a really good esports gaming PC as is. Most of you out there are not buying these HPs just to test the 5300G, so you really don't have to worry about these other numbers, but just for the people out there who are really interested in if you pick up a 5300G PC, how it actually performs, well, on Apex Legends at 720p low settings, you can get 50-ish FPS. It's playable, but again, you're running at 720p low settings, and there's a lot of stutter. It takes really long for any sort of textures to load in, and it's just not a great gaming experience. You can play, and I've gotten some kills in Apex Legends, as you can see on screen here, but again, it's not great, so I wouldn't really recommend it for that. But I think overclocking that iGPU would definitely get you more into the 60 FPS range, rock solid. So yeah, I'm very excited to test that in the future, but unfortunately with an HP motherboard, there's really not much we can do there. And the last game we decided to test was Rainbow Six Siege using the built-in benchmark on high settings with the RX 5500. We ended up getting 235 FPS average. Again, this is an esports focused PC. Yeah, you can play games like Cold War and Warzone and some other racing games out there if you really want to, but for the most part, you're looking at the lower end esports titles if you want to have an awesome 100 plus FPS gaming experience. And the same goes with Rainbow Six Siege on high settings with the 5300G. The only reason I did test on high settings is I wanted to just show you the big difference between the GPU and the iGPU. We did average 60 FPS exactly, so lowering those settings would probably get you 100 plus FPS in Rainbow Six Siege using something that is, well, just an iGPU. It's actually pretty impressive how far this technology has actually come, and I'm really excited to do some custom builds with them. But for the most part, the 5300G is a good successor to the 3400G. I think all of us really just want that graphics processor to improve because it is the exact same one as the 3200G and 3400G, just better CPU performance. So I look forward to the next generation of APUs that have better onboard graphics, because I think AMD has a really awesome product here, and I'm very excited to see how it performs. So that would be finished the benchmarking section of today's video. I want to bring Jackson back in here to wrap this video up real quick.